I'm Karen Lips, president of the Network of Enlightened Women. I am pleased to introduce Lisa Nelson, CEO of the American Legislative Exchange Council, a 45-year-old nonprofit think tank dedicated to the principles of limited government, free markets, and federalism. For 16 years before ALEC, Lisa led government relations departments in the private sectors at companies such as Visa and AOL Time Warner. Prior to that, she worked on Capitol Hill, where she served as public affairs liaison for the U.S. Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. She's a political science and international relations graduate of the University of California at Berkeley and the mom of 2 kids. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about leadership and to be our featured Lead Like a Lady speaker.
Well, it's so great to see you, Karen, and I'm so proud of what you guys have been able to accomplish at Enlightened Women. It's just fascinating to see all of your successes, and I'm happy to be here.
Oh, well, thanks, Lisa. It's great going over your bio this morning as I was preparing for this. You have been a leader across sectors, from the private sector to Capitol Hill to now the nonprofit sector. Could you talk about what leadership skills have served you well across all of these sectors?
You know, I was thinking about that as I knew I was going to be talking to you, and you think about your life and how you've had success. And I think everything that I can kind of point to has been an open-mindedness to different ideas, different ways of approaching things. Maybe some would call it flexibility, but I've always been someone who has an open mind as opposed to a closed mind in terms of, you know, hey, let's try this, or have we done it this way? Because what I have learned is a lot of times, you know, you're reinventing the wheel. And it's something that people have already tried, and people have said, well, that's the way we do it here, or in our office, or in our project. But certainly with how fast things are moving in the fast-paced world that we're living in right now, where information is coming at us so quickly, being prepared, being flexible, and being able to pivot easily, I think has been a really, it's been a really good source of my success, and frankly, keeps me energetic and keeps me positive.
It makes the work fun, doesn't it? When you feel like you can, add some creativity to things.
Yeah.
Definitely. Maybe give us some specific examples of where bringing an open-minded approach to a problem led to a new creative solution and a big impact.
Well, certainly around, and one of the things that you mentioned in my career was working for Newt Gingrich, and I was at an organization that was a nonprofit when I kind of got to know him and started working with him, but working on something called the Contract with America back in 1994 and 93, which was the first time that Republicans had taken over the House in 40 years. So in my lifetime, the Republicans hadn't ever had the majority in the House and the Capitol. I
imagine, Lisa, it's hard for us to even understand how big of a moment that was as we've seen the House flip, but I bet that was just such a big moment.
It was incredible, and it still gives me chills thinking about it. And I'm glad that you jumped in there, because I'm often reminded that for the people who work with me and for me now, they think that a constant flip back and forth between Democrats and Republicans is a normal thing. In my lifetime at 30 and at 35 and working on the Contract with America with Newt at the time, there had never been a Republican majority. So, and there was a much different balance and makeup of the Congress. It was not so as divided as it is now, but it was the ability to kind of think through differently. How can we break that cycle? How can we break the cycle and actually educate people into thinking and understanding that free markets and limited government is a great solution. So we developed a Contract with America. That's a history lesson in itself, but there was 10 items and policy items that we pledged to do should we get the majority in the first 100 days. And so that was a new crazy idea. And now even today, you're seeing members of the House, and even Senator Scott, I think, has come out with a contract with the people to say, should Republicans be endowed with the majority after 2022, here's what they would, pledge to try to get accomplished.
And so from that, do you think that we are still learning from that marketing campaign and how successful that is? You said Senator Scott's got one. Have you seen the left adopt this strategy as well?
It's interesting. I also want to be a lifelong learner, and your choice of words is great because we learn every year how to communicate, how to message, how to talk about things, what works, what doesn't, and you kind of always need to be adapting because younger generations learn in different ways. So I think that for something like a contract with America or like a policy prescription that would be a real positive for people who want to run for office, it's always better to offer hope and opportunity and a vision than being for something rather than being against something. So I'm kind of, intrinsically an optimistic person. So I always like to find what we're working for as opposed to what we're working against. Sometimes the messaging just is a lot cleaner and it's a lot easier to say, no, we're not for that. We're against that. And sometimes that works. And you just have to, kind of make those critical path decisions at the right moment.
You mentioned the younger generation. Could you talk a little bit about what leadership skills you look for in new hires, new young people that you're thinking about bringing on? And what do you think are some of the most important leadership skills for recent grads to try to develop in their last year of school or in that internship or that first job?
I would say, as far as skills go, writing and communication skills are critical. When I'm interviewing folks and thinking about them, fitting into the culture here where we are at ALEC, I'm looking for people who can communicate directly and concisely. And then, finding writing capabilities has been more challenging than you would think. So for those of you who are listening and watching, pay attention and hone your writing skills, tighten up your writing skills, because you'll get a lot further in your job if they immediately identify that you can write well and you can communicate well. So that's on the skill set. I think just from a personality perspective, I'm always looking for passion, and that doesn't necessarily have to mean passion around a single issue, but it should mean passion about whatever it is you care about. If you feel strongly about something, I really tend to gravitate towards people that are a little more passionate, maybe a little more courageous. So courage. That doesn't mean going in and saying, I want to be the boss, in 2 weeks, because a lot of young people, I think that they can just leapfrog in jobs very quickly. I think that you need to take your time and understand what the job description and what the requirements are. Have that passion, have that drive, have the courage to speak up for yourself and for your issues. But then recognize that there is structure within any organization and that you've got to, kind of work within those structures to have success.
We talk about rising in a career or in job. Could you talk about what you think has made you successful as a conservative women leader and what maybe different challenges conservative women leaders face today?
Well, some of these issues start to get a little sticky with all the cancel culture and and people on campuses feeling like they can't speak up. I think as a conservative woman, you should try to get your point across with a smile and with a calm demeanor, as opposed to kind of an aggressive, forward-leaning posture. I think that kill them with kindness is always a great way to kind of get your point across. Know your facts, know what you're talking about. I think that information now is so readily available and so easy to access know what you want to, if you're trying to persuade, if you're being a passionate persuader on some, you're going to be on a panel or you're going to be in a debate, know your facts and then be passionate about it and use that to your advantage and smile.
Never forget that smile, right?
Right, that's right.
That positive energy, I think, is contagious and can make you a stronger advocate.
Definitely.
Well, I want to turn to the states and local level. As part of this Lead Like a Lady campaign, one thing we're talking about with our students is the idea is they don't have to wait until they're elected or have a title or have a job to really make a difference in their communities and to be leaders. And even at the workplace, other people might look to them for leadership, even if they don't have the biggest title. Could you talk about how you identify leaders at the state level? Because I know you work with a lot of great state folks. How you identify those leaders and what are some common threads you notice at the state level?
Thank you for that. It's a great question. And we're certainly seeing a lot more activity and activism at the state level. And through women in particular. I will say a couple things. One, in this era of education and what's being taught in the schools and what your children are being taught, and I know that's kind of maybe down the road for a lot of your viewers. I think what we've seen is a lot of women engaged and a lot of angry women or committed women that have decided it's time for them to understand what's going on in the classroom, what's going on, over their child's shoulder on the laptop while they're working, studying from home. So love seeing all these new women's groups and moms groups start up. It's almost like a viral campaign that's happening, and no one organization from top down is doing this. This is happening at the local level, and women are kind of deciding it's time to engage. So that's really exciting. I think the other thing that I would say is they're engaging both through the education system, but also through this election process. A lot more people we've seen are engaging through being a poll watcher, understanding what the rules are, how elections work, what the process is. I don't volunteer from a party position, but I volunteer every election day out at the polling site just to be a poll watcher. And that's it's fulfilling because you see the people in your community and you can help them answer questions, right or left. I think it's important for people to feel like there's educated women in the sites. And then the last thing I will say on that is just, it's not improbable for college students and or just out of college women to run for a school board or a city council race. We've got a lot of young women who are running for office just to dip their toe in the water. There are 7,383 state legislators across the country. And of that 7,383, 2,297 of them are women. And that's Republican and Democrats, independents, conservatives, all walks of life. And I think that's fabulous. It's been growing for the last decade, leaps and bounds. Likewise in Congress, there are 536 House members and Senate members total, and there's 144 women in that grouping. There should be more, and I think that if we can encourage and your network can encourage women to get engaged and think about what role they might want to play, we can continue to build on that, on those numbers, and have more and more women in elected office.
Definitely. And Lisa, could you talk about what are some victories that you've had at ALEC, at the local or state level, that then you've seen translate to other states? Because my understanding is that what often happens is one state figures out a way to solve a problem, and then it's great for our democracy. Then another state realizes, hey, we could solve this problem too.
That's the way it works. The laboratories of democracy at the state level kind of play on each other and they compete. We do have a ranking, rich states, poor states, that ranks all the states, and we have big red buttons that people wear at our meetings. What's your state ranking? So that we can inject a little competition.
That's a good competition there.
competition always is great. But Utah has been #1 for 14 years. All 14 years that we've been ranking the states, Utah has been the #1 state because we rank on economic outlook and then economic policies. So looking for that, kind of best practices has been really, really good. I will say that that the women legislators, I don't ever like to pigeonhole issues as women's issues. I think that women should be interested and are interested in all issues. So we have a women's legislative caucus within ALEC, and believe it or not, most of the things we talk about are economic policies, sometimes education, but it's not focused on just women's issues or traditional women's issues that may be social in nature or things like that. I like to hear women talking about budgets and appropriations and good use of fiscal policy, free trade, competition, all the things that I think come from a healthy economy. So I would, you can look at yourself as maybe a generalist. I always say that I'm kind of 30,000 feet wide and about an inch deep on every policy. I've got my policy experts that can do the deep dive. I've enjoyed a career being a generalist, but there's also women who would rather kind of zero in and hone in on a much more specific policy area that they want to work in. Maybe it's healthcare, maybe it's education, maybe it's criminal justice reform. So as you think about your careers, think about, do you want to be a generalist or do you want to be a specialist? And you don't have to decide that right now, but you can certainly start to ask that question. And as you take different jobs or as you do different projects, think, well, am I enjoying this as much as I thought I would, or am I happier as a worker being, out front or maybe being behind the scenes? There's a lot there, but those are the things I think about.
Oh, that's great advice, especially that distinction between, are you going to be a generalist or are you going to be a specialist? Because that can really determine your career path. Can you talk a little bit, Lisa, about how the workplace has changed over your career?
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, certainly in the last 2 years, it's changed a lot. And that's, you almost have to set the COVID kind of remote work deal a little bit aside for your question. I think that there are more and more women in leadership positions. Certainly being the CEO of ALEC, I think there was one more CEO of ALEC before me, but she was only here for about a year. But I like to see more and more women in that leadership role. Our CFO here at ALEC is a female. Our head of development is a female. And a lot of our task force directors, those specialists in different policies, are women. I think that I don't want to generalize too much, but I do think that women's intuition and women's ability to capture maybe motive or ideas are a lot more sought after in the workplace than they were maybe 20 years ago. And I would say that, for all the women that are involved in Enlightened Women, the world is your oyster. You've got this capability and this opportunity to really rise up and take advantage of these, kind of new open doors that you can walk through. But I've always kind of liked working with women who support other women as well. So in your life, find women who really support other women, not women who, it's about them and about their career path. I try to promote women as much as I can. I try to mentor women at my office. I'm on boards of different organizations, Winning for Women and Right Now, and all kinds of other organizations that really promote other women. And we tend to gravitate towards each other because we like to prop each other up and really support what you're doing. It's exactly what you guys are doing, Karen, at Enlightened Women. I love what you've done, and I think that you need to get as much support as possible so that you can continue to grow.
Well, thank you, Lisa. And I want to end by asking you, for our students who are out there who are eager to develop their leadership skills, do you have any books or podcasts that you recommend? And then could you also share how they can follow you on social media?
Absolutely. There's one great podcast that I've actually done, and it might be a woman that you were also going to reach out to, but Laura Cox Kaplan has a great podcast.
Yeah.
She said, I've got her mug right here, but she's doing great work and really empowering young women, older women, people in all walks of life to talk about their experiences and share, both the ups and the downs, because we all have some downs too. So she's been great. I listen to Newt Gingrich's podcast, of course. So listen to that. And then we have a podcast at ALEC called Across the States. It's actually ranked in the top 5 of policy podcasts. So I would recommend and call your attention to Across the States, and a podcast that you could read or listen to when you're driving or on your way to school.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for your kind words and your great advice. We appreciate you being with us.
It's great to see you, and congratulations to all you women. Take the cookies when they're passed and walk through those doors when they're open for you.
Thank you.